Hello, everyone. And yes, we made it into the afternoon of the day 2 of this conference. Time flies. It didn't really feel like 2 days because it's such a wonderful event. And I want to really congratulate the organizers for putting this event together. I'm really impressed. It's actually my second time in Vilnius. I came to the Life Sciences Baltics events last year, and it blew my mind. Here I am, and really exceed my expectations, so congratulations. And thank you for inviting me again. So here in Vilnius especially, we hear a lot about new technologies, emerging solutions, emerging services, products, really game changers, as Wolfgang elaborated, that will revolutionize industries. And that's all good. That's great. This is progress. A lot of innovation and scientific progress is happening every day all over the world. I want to take a step back and think about how we as individuals, we as organizations, how we can make sense in the world of fast developing technologies and rapidly evolving scientific progress, how we can ensure that we actually understand new technologies, how we can spot innovation opportunities, how we can make sure we distinguish between the next game changer and technology that will actually become obsolete in the next couple of years. So this presentation will be useful for big organizations such as NASA, MICHAL, the innovation agency of Lithuania, who want to really understand how to progress into the future, understanding scientific innovation, but also for smaller players who we saw at the Expo exposition. For them, the key question is, how do I position myself in the innovation landscape, and what's my relative strength compared to other innovators? Will my technology be useful and competitive in the next 5 or 10 years? These are all very important questions we have to start asking ourselves. So a couple of words about myself. You can, based on my accent and the surname, you can see that I was actually born in a yet another post-Soviet country. I was born in the beautiful city of Bydgoszcz in Poland. Anybody knows where Bydgoszcz is? Wow, you're from Poland. No, I'm impressed. Great. So, well, just to put it on the map, if you drive from Vilnius to Berlin, 8 hours, you're in Bydgoszcz. But for the past 10 years, I've been in the UK. My passion is life sciences, healthcare, pharmaceuticals. And really, for the past 3 years, I've been leading the life sciences division of Cambridge Innovation Consulting, which is a new type of a consulting firm. And we see ourselves as disruptors of the consulting sector. We want to bring quality into consulting so we can solve in-depth, technologically challenging problems which at the moment traditional consultancies struggle with. But I wonder also who we have in the public. So who in the audience is from a large organization, like let's say a couple of hundred employees or a couple of thousand employees? Okay, couple of hands. Smaller ones like startups or medium? Okay. Who's from a public organization? Who? Mm-hmm. Do we have any investors? Only a few. Okay, great. That's a good crowd. I will focus my presentation on life sciences, just because this is where my expertise is. But the principles of technology innovation we'll discuss will apply to pretty much all industrial sectors. I really like talking about pharma because this industry is really full of problems. If you're from pharma industry, well, I'm sorry for you. So pharmaceutical industry really embarks on an amazing journey where a very kind of foundational science, basic science projects are supposed to be turned into valid, functional products that can be used safely in humans to save lives and improve health. This is really ambitious. And at the moment, it takes around 15 years to bring a new molecule to the market. You have to start with tests in the lab, you have to test thousands of molecules, you have to spend time testing your new compounds in Petri dishes, test tubes, then take these tests into animals. That's already 5 or 6 years of work. And then you enter the very costly phase. It takes another 6 years of testing your potential drug candidate in humans, and the failure rate is astonishing. It's around 90%. In phase 3, the final stage of clinical trials, the failure rate is actually closer to 97%. You can imagine that you lose a lot of money following this kind of innovation pipeline. So we talked earlier with Garrett about the importance of failing often, but failing quickly. Pharma fails in the worst possible way at the moment. Okay. It takes, as a result, a lot of money to bring drugs to the market, around $2 billion at the moment. And the return on investment into new R&D projects in big pharma is around 3% at the moment. This is very low. Imagine you invest $100, you wait 15 years, and you earn $3. It's not great. Smaller players, SME biotech companies, they do a little bit better. This rate is around 12% for them. Why do you think this may be the case? Why smaller organizations can make more money out of innovation, out of R&D projects? Any ideas? Go ahead, help me out. Nobody? Everybody is very shy. Any ideas? And smaller ones, they get additional investment. Okay, but that's still money. We have to turn it into revenue and profit, right? So why would a smaller firm be better at turning that investment? Okay, so they're more selfish, I think, less collaborative. Okay, right, yes, potentially. Well, the major reason is that smaller players tend to be more focused. So for 10, 15, 20 years of their existence, they tend to focus on 1 or 2 core indications. And as a result, in the world of more complex diseases that we want to treat, more complex medications, they develop the necessary know-how of how to effectively take new ideas and new molecules to the market. There's a number of reasons, but that would be the core one. Okay, good. So the question is, especially for big pharma, but for many large organizations, like large car manufacturers, public organizations like NASA also, is how to innovate better. I'll give you 2 examples. First, an unhappy example of how not to innovate. This is Valiant Pharmaceuticals. It changed its name now. I won't tell you the new name. They had a very peculiar approach to scientific innovation. Apart from inflating drug prices and other legal problems, they fundamentally misunderstood the nature of scientific innovation and how to evaluate and extract value of new innovative ideas. So they had a very unfocused, very aggressive acquisition strategy. They would go for and acquire a lot of amazing companies, but what would they do with those companies? They would aim at very quick return on investment. They would be looking to very quickly sell the current successful asset of those companies, disregarding the future game changers that those companies had in their pipelines. In fact, this was exemplified by the fact that they would only invest around 3% of their budget into R&D. The industry average is around 10 to 12%. But also, after acquiring company, for example, after acquiring Salix Pharmaceuticals, which used to be a leading GI, gastrointestinal, small-medium enterprise, they would lay off 1/3 of the R&D staff. So they wouldn't be looking for this long-term, 10, 20-year horizon vision of innovation. Rather, they would go for the long-hanging fruits. Well, this didn't work out for them, really. Shares dropped by 90%. I think the company went bust. It wasn't a sustainable strategy. We can look at a slightly different example, happier example. Pfizer, I think we all know this company. They did an amazing thing. In 2015, they invested in a company called Hospira. It was the hospital products division of Abbott Laboratories. And in 2015, Abbott was really great at playing with generic injectable medications. So if you inject a medication, it means that you cannot give it entirely orally because it will be decomposed, digested in the stomach. So these molecules, although generic, so copies of other molecules, were way more complex. What's the name of these kind of medicines, products? Anybody can help me out? A generic biological molecule. Biosimilar, yes, thank you. So biosimilar became a buzzword in 2017, yet in 2 years before, February 2015, Pfizer made already an investment into a biosimilars company. Financial analysts, investors, named it one of the most overpriced deals. They said it was overpriced by 40%. Analysts, financial analysts, fundamentally misunderstood the future value of this new emerging field of biosimilars. There is a lesson in Pfizer's case study. Right, so how can we be more like Pfizer and less like Valiant? We talk a lot about innovation, technology. What is technology? It's a very nebulous term. So in the context of healthcare, it can mean a piece of hospital equipment, it can mean a diagnostic device, it can also mean a drug, a protein like monoclonal antibody. So examples of technologies are really vast numbers of such examples. However, fortunately, there is a finite number of type of activities that we can engage in when we deal with technologies. And chief innovation officers, chief technology officers of successful firms, they ask themselves questions about those core activities related to technologies every day. So these 6 blocks, they represent core concepts of what is called technology management. You have to start by formulating your innovation strategy. You have to identify innovation opportunities, such as the biosimilars field. You have to not only identify, but reliably predict that these kind of technologies will be game changers in the industry. You have to evaluate assets, select best innovation opportunities. Then you can think about implementing your strategy. You can think of acquiring a company, acquiring an asset, in licensing a technology, maybe entering a R&D partnership with a university or other company. And finally, if you do that correctly, you can commercialize, you can monetize on your correct plan, you can implement your technology into your current manufacturing system, supply chain, and exploit this technology to generate a profit for your organization. Following this process can be described as the process of technology innovation, really. Fortunately, there are tools, which I listed here on the right, which can guide an organization in a step-by-step way in how to innovate properly. Technology landscaping, which is all about assessing the current state of the art of a technology field, is a foundation of this process. We don't have time to cover all of this, but we'll come back to technology landscaping in a minute. Right, so we know that it's very easy to get confused about new emerging trends. Even today, we've heard about new technology field which will revolutionize different industries. We know now that we can follow a step-by-step systematic approach to understanding innovation opportunities and making correct decisions for our organizations. But once we know what questions to ask, who do we ask? Who do we go to gain that kind of insight and knowledge? My answer, and this is a thesis I'd like to propose to you today, is that we should go more often to the academia, to academic scientists. Unfortunately, most interactions between academia and large firms tend to revolve around very specific R&D projects, very specific challenges, problems. I want to argue that scientists can be involved in more profound way. They can help you answer strategic questions that your company is currently struggling with. Why is that? Well, academic researchers, they spend usually their whole working life in a very narrow field of expertise. They are aware of all the relevant developments in a given technology sphere. They assist at peer review of publications, they go to conferences, they mingle with individuals from their field of expertise on a daily basis. They are really best informed about the advantages and disadvantages of specific technologies, and most importantly, because of their position, they're uniquely placed at the very forefront of new emerging scientific areas and technology areas, so they can predict how these areas will look like in the next 5 or 10 years. And that's very important for industrial organizations. There are, of course, many problems with academia. People say, oh, academics, they live in a bubble. They have their own world. They're siloed. They don't interact with the real world. Well, historically, even the way academia is structured with different departments at universities really promoted working in such silos. Now people try to overcome this and make projects more collaborative, bring biologists, connect them with physicists, for example, to really drive progress. But that's not the only problem. So academic language also tends to be extremely vague and complex. So if I tell you that this is an exemplification of the outlined conception, what did I say? Exemplification of the outlined conception. It's just an example of an idea. That's all I meant. Or if I am in a spatial and temporal dimension right now, well, I just occupy some place in a given time, basically. Unfortunately, many papers are very difficult to read. This makes the world of academia even more hermetic. Unfortunately, interactions between industry and academics are sporadic. Usually, academics meet at academic conferences, and really industrial visitors, industrial attendees are really a rare sight. They don't feel very well in these environments for some reason. There are other practical difficulties. Not all scientific papers are open access, unfortunately. And also, there are just so many papers published every year that it's very difficult to be aware of all of them and let alone make sense. How many papers do you think are published, scientific papers, each year? Can you give me a number? Can you guess? How many papers a year? Sir, can you help me? What do you think? How many papers? Scientific publications every year? 50 million. Wow. You're the first person ever who actually over 15, 1-5. Well, it's actually 2.5 million, but that's close, the same order of magnitude. It gives you really a taste of how much knowledge there is and experience there is in the world of academia. But for all of these reasons, it's very difficult to access this knowledge and transfer it to industry to help companies thrive. Scientists in industry versus scientists in academia have different incentives. Industry wants what? Wants quick return on investment. Academia wants quality of research, high rate of publication and citation. Timelines are different. Industry cares about quick technology commercialization, while scientists in academia, they want to understand problems in depth and provide this gradual understanding of a subject matter. And they have fundamentally different goals. So industrial scientists, they apply science to solve real problems, while academics, they just want to understand nature. At least these are those historical goals which still prevail in our world. I want to ask you, so if we understand the strength of academic scientists, if we could imagine you're a CEO of a pharma venture and you have access to 20 world-class professors in a new emerging field, what kind of questions, strategic questions, you could get answered by working with those scientists? I'll give you a few examples. We discussed that scientists in academia have this unique ability to predict the future of their own field of expertise. Well, as a scientific venture, you can get access to knowledge which will help you answer how can we expand our therapeutic portfolio to remain competitive in the next 5 years. Because the scientist, the professor from MIT, from Stanford, he will know the shortcomings of your technologies. He or she will know what kind of new products are about to enter the picture and whether your current asset will become obsolete or it will thrive in the next 5 or 10 years. Going back to methodologies, being able to work with scientists is one thing. Being able to locate them, assemble teams of world-class scientists is one challenge. Big question also is how do you extract knowledge from those scientists from the benefit of your organization? And here we go back to those fundamental technology innovation methodologies. We said earlier that technology landscape is really the foundation of a solid innovation process. It's a very systematic way of understanding a technology field. So take a very buzzy, nebulous buzzword of nanotechnology. Well, how we would normally approach it, if you want to understand it properly, first, we need to understand what are the goals of your organization. Do you want to systematize your knowledge about nanotechnology? Or maybe you're a smaller player who wants to understand your competitive position in this nanotechnology landscape. So we would proceed to segment this technology into its relevant areas. So for example, nanotechnology applied to drug delivery, nanotechnology as on nanoparticles as genetic markers, for example. And then within each of those blocks, we can start identifying key innovators in academia and in industry, and each of them will work on a number of technologies. From there, we arrive at technology landscape, which we can analyze to identify those peaks and valleys to understand the relative value of these current innovations, which we hope will revolutionize the world, but we have to distinguish between better and worse opportunities. Take field of machine learning. We discussed it briefly earlier today. Machine learning, this is a system which has some predictive capacity. It consists of the algorithm, the computer, which provides the necessary processing power, and also data which you can supply to your system, such as a data sets of images with relevant labels. And then the system will be able to improve itself as it interacts with the world. In drug discovery, which is the very first stage of drug development we discussed earlier, the market in this particular application is around $8 billion at the moment, and drug discovery forms around constitutes over 1/3 of this market. I'm told I don't have much time, but just to showcase to you, if you were to identify, using the methodology I just presented, all innovators only in industry in this field, in this particular application of machine learning, you would be able to list around 50 different companies. Each of these companies works on several distinct technologies, and they published at least 2-3 scientific papers in the last 5 years on each of these technologies. So for you to understand machine learning applied to drug discovery, you actually have to study around 800 to 1,000 scientific papers. No single organization is able to do it internally by themselves. So if you are a big pharma firm and you tell me, we are going into machine learning, it's going to revolutionize drug discovery for us. Well, I'm being skeptical, and I will ask you, how are you interacting with academia? Because all the knowledge about machine learning applied to drug discovery is already there. You don't want to be reinventing the wheel. You don't want to be missing out on key opportunities. To wrap it up, at Cambridge Innovation Consulting, we developed a proprietary step-by-step process through which we identify correct world-class researchers in academia and technology experts from industry. We build customized teams of such scientists and then apply methodologies such as technology landscaping to solve these strategically important problems for our industrial partners, for example, big pharma firms. So I hope this presentation really will encourage you to rethink how your organizations interact with academic scientists, and also will encourage you to approach innovation a little bit differently, thinking about all the wealth of knowledge that's already there in the world of academia. So if any of this is interesting to you, if innovation methodologies is something you would like to explore, please talk to me and I will be very excited to have a chat. Thank you.